Senator Blunt, Senator Cochran, thank you. Welcome, Dr. Collins and your team. I want to first express my appreciation to Senator Blunt and Senator Murray for their leadership last year on the significant increase in funding for the National Institutes of Health, which I'm glad to support. And I was about to mention Senator Durbin, and then I looked up and down the row here. I don't think there's anybody here who doesn't hope that we can find ways to make what happened last year a pattern this year and in the future. So I thank Blunt and Murray for their leadership on that in this committee. Second, thank you for mentioning the work that our authorization committee has done. Senator Murray's ranking on that. We finished our work, basically, in the committee. We've done the things that you've asked us to do. You said top talent, ability to recruit top talent was very important for you. We've made many of the changes you suggested. Electronic medical records are absolutely essential to the precision medicine initiative you described. We've done a number of things there. The Vice President's talking about making researchers who use NIH funds to make them share their data. You've talked about that. That's in the law that we passed yesterday. Thank you. We gave you more flexibility to make alliances like the Google-Vanderbilt alliance that the President announced not long ago. We reduced a number of really pretty silly provisions that create a lot of unnecessary paperwork. So we ask you, what could we do to create an environment where you could succeed, and we tried to do that. Now, the major thing we've got remaining is what I would describe as an NIH Innovation Fund and how to pay for it. The House of Representatives has already passed its 21st Century Cures Act. They appropriated $8.8 billion in mandatory funding. I've tried to come up with a way to deal with that here that met the standard. Senator Blunt mentioned no cliffs, replacing other mandatory funding to help pay for it, to make sure it isn't instead of an increase in annual funding, and that we have appropriate oversight. So let me ask you in the remaining time to comment on that. Are the priorities that I suggested earlier, launching precision medicine, Cancer Moonshot, Brain Initiative, 650 American Young Investigator Corps, big Biothink Awards, are those still priorities? Can you do those without funding cliffs? Would mandatory funding somehow give you more flexibility to ramp spending up and then down? And what would you do about oversight in terms of a strategic plan for each of those 5 areas?
Well, thank you for the question and your leadership, Senator. We are enormously excited about the 5 areas that you just enumerated. The focus, for instance, on young investigators, trying to create an even more vigorous pathway for their recruitment and support, which is one of those 5. The big Biothink, which you mentioned, which is an opportunity for all of the 27 institutes to have a chance to put a challenge out there to their community about what are the really big ideas that could go forward in the next few years. And of course, precision medicine and the Cancer Moonshot and the brain, all very high priorities for us. While I totally agree with what you said about the importance of not having this kind of mandatory funds displace a regular discretionary support, because that would be a very unfortunate outcome, we do believe that for those 5 areas, we could, in the space of a few years, identify components that could be nicely supported through this mechanism and would not result in a cliff, and which would, if we were given appropriate flexibility, be something that we could put forward in terms of what those timetables would look like and what those envelopes might look like as far as specific dollar figures. And I certainly agree that we would expect to have appropriate oversight about how those dollars would be spent. We'd be happy, in fact, to submit a work plan and then be held accountable for that over the course of the coming years to make it very clear that we do understand this is a big responsibility that you, through the congressional process and speaking for the taxpayers, expect us to use. And
so you do believe that in those 5 areas, those are still priorities that you've identified, and second,
absolutely,
that you could identify elements of them that would be discrete, have a beginning and an end, do them without a cliff, and perhaps even the mandatory funding would provide us a way to give you funding in a way that you didn't have to spend it all at once, and you could ramp up and ramp down according to the real needs of the project.
That's exactly right. Yes, I do believe these are major priorities. We could design things that way, and I appreciate what you said at the end about the flexibility that would help us a lot in terms of designing the exact funding envelope that would make the most sense for each of those 5 programs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.